For the past 10 years, Jase Dussia has been competing in RC freestyle competitions, honing his skills to the highest level. In 2019, Jase captured first place in all three major North American freestyle competitions, the XFC V2, the Clover Creek Invitational, and the Tucson Invitational Freestyle. Along the way, Jase and his crew chief and dad, John, have prepared all of their aircraft together in their home shop. Behind the winning performance are thousands and thousands of practice flights. Those practice flights can't happen without a tremendously reliable setup. Jase and John have invited all of us to come into their workshop to see how they set up their airplanes for freestyle competition. Follow along through every step as John and Jase prepare an Extreme Flight 104-inch extra NG for competition, and then get a tour of their championship-winning 104-inch laser. This presentation is broken down into chapters to allow you to easily find the area of assembly or setup that you wish to concentrate on. The Dussia's method of aircraft preparation utilizes tried and true techniques, but emphasizes care and patience in each and every step of their setup. As we enter the process, the first step is to sand each of the control horns supplied in the kit to remove any gloss and provide a good surface for bonding.
All right, first thing I want to do is I'm going to insert this into the slots. Make sure it's fully seated. Take my pencil, mark along the plate. Pull it back out. Make sure my number 11 blade is real sharp. Just cut along the inside of my mark. Again, the reason I do that is so that the covering edges are actually underneath the plate, and it reduces the chance of the covering peeling back. Don't be afraid if you cut into the sheathing a little bit, but just don't cut all the way through. I take my high saw gun, right in the center, squeeze it. You can see it go in and fill up the whole slot. And I take the arm and plate already assembled and painted. Hit both sides with a high saw. Just like that. Now you might notice I don't clean anything up. I kind of like to have a nice little bead along the edges, whatever comes out, whatever squirts out the edge. Or the sides, I usually like to leave that. Just like so. Make sure it's fully seated again. Set it aside, move on to the next one. All right, let's move on to the ailerons. I'm gonna go ahead and use the shortest on the inside and the longer arms on the outside, horns. So again, I like to test fit them. You can see I've already pre-painted them and sanded where the glue is going to be. Take my pencil, go around the outside of the plate. Do the same on the out. Again, the outside is the longer of the two sets, meaning longer from here to here, the further distance. And again, I like to cut inside the mark I made so that the covering edges are underneath the plate. It doesn't have to be exactly square. Just make sure you're removing the covering to expose the sheathing and the wood. Do that on both sides. Remembering to cut inside your mark. Now when you come across something like this where you have the black and the white, there's usually 2 layers. So you're going to have 2 layers of ultracoat that you're cutting through. There we go. We have the mark here and the cut here. Again, the mark over here and then the cut, exposing the wood. I'm going to take my high saw, squirt some right into the little slots here until it comes out the top. Do the same on the outer. What I like about this high saw is it actually mixes. It's a 2-part epoxy, and it mixes as it comes out of the tube. So you don't have to rush. It doesn't start hardening until it's actually out of the tube. And it takes quite a while for it to set up too, but I've used it for several years and it seems to work really well. All right, grab the arms here, your horns, the whole assembly all ready to go, sanded. Before we do that, let's make sure we glue. Put more of the high saw here, both sides. Doesn't have to be perfectly spread out and uniform, because that's why we put it in here. So it should slide right in nice and neat, and you'll see it ooze out. I'm a little heavier on that, so what I'll do is I'll just take my finger, wipe it off, and the rest I'll leave. Again, that helps hold all the covering around the edges so it doesn't peel off over time. And then I'll move on to the outer. Do the exact same thing. I already have the high saw in the slots, and there's a hard block in there. Do the same thing, put a little bit of high saw on the outside, inside, inside, back on the outside. So what I'm doing, what I'm looking for here is, if you notice on these horns, there's some flat spots right here. You want to make sure that is seated all the way. If it doesn't seat correctly, and it's off a little bit like that, then obviously if one is off and one is not, then your lines aren't gonna, or your holes will not line up, and your bolt will be in there on an angle. And if they're not both equal, then chances are that your linkage will be different lengths as well. So make sure you get these seated in all the way, right at these little shoulders here. There, we did a little better job on this one. And just like that, we'll move on to the next one. Okay, now I'm gonna move on to the rudder. Just kind of a thing that I do is I'll put it on the left-hand side. I've always done that, it doesn't matter. You can pick and choose whatever side you want. No real reason, it's just something I've always done. So as you can see, this one here, the slots are not cut. Just take your knife, push down, or actually take your finger, push down, you can feel the slot. Make sure that you find them, and they should reveal themselves as they do. Take your knife, work right in the middle, just make one little slot, go each direction. Make sure at the end with the covering, make sure you open it up that way. That's all you need to do, because all you're doing here is trying to get your horn to be test fit in there. And obviously you can tell this is a rudder horn. You'll have various sizes in your kit, but this one here is obviously different than the rest. So I went ahead and painted them, sanded them, put the plate on. I'm going to test fit it right here. It should just push right in, just like that. Again, make sure it's fully seated. Looks pretty good. As long as you're happy with that, go ahead, take your pencil, mark around the plate, just like we did on all the others. Now this one here, as you can see, the plate does not go all the way to the bevel, so you might want to make a mark here as well. On the other ones, we didn't have to do that because the plate went all the way to the bevel. Pull it back out, just as we did. And again, take your knife and cut inside the line. Just like this. You're gonna find here, you got 3 layers that you're cutting through. You got the black, you've got the red, and then the silver. So this line here, you're gonna have to push a little bit harder. And peel it right up. Just like that. Since we've already test fit the horn into the slots, we know that fits well, we can go ahead and glue it in. Make sure your horn is assembled. Hopefully you do it the same way, because as you can see, sometimes these are not symmetric with the slots, but you want to make sure that they fit where you cut. So if you want to test fit that, just to verify, we're all set to go. Just something to think about. Everything's identical to what we've done previously on the other control surfaces. Again, you put it in. And you should see a little bit of adhesive push out, just like so. We're ready to go. And that concludes all the horn installs. How's that?
All right, here we have our servos and servo arms. We've been fortunate enough to work with MKS for about the past 5 years or so. And what we've came up here is our current servo of choice for a 120cc aerobatic airplane, the MKS HBL 3850. Last year at this time, we actually received the prototype version of these servos, and we used these in the 2019 season with some really good success. I know personally I'm really happy with them. I believe they're rated at high voltage, 8.4 volts, close to 800 ounces, at 0.11 speed. Personally, that's perfect for my style of flying. High torque. I really haven't noticed any blowback at rifle rolls, high speeds, or anything. Just really fortunate to be able to work with MKS on developing this kind of servo. And hopefully, I know we've heard a lot of good feedback so far, and hopefully you'll like it, and hopefully you maybe even want to try it out.
Yeah, and what I really like about these is it has an 8mm spline. So not only do you have a big spline, you know, like this, but if you think about it, with that size diameter spline, you have to have a large bearing as well. So you have a very robust, big bearing, and of course 8mm spline, which seem to be really durable, and they center very nice.
Yeah, the first airplane that we used to test it was on the 120cc Slick. The flight demo at the main line at Joe Knoll was basically the first big introduction to this servo. And of course at XFC, Clover Creek in Tucson, these were used in that same Slick and the 104 Laser as well. There's a couple other really good pilots that use them. Spencer Nordquist is one of them, and a few others. And you know, most of the Team MKS guys are starting to use them. It's basically development from the 380. Really similar servo, just geared a little bit differently. And also the new 388 is another development as well. depending on what kind of use you're going for.
Okay, let's now we have our servos all unboxed here. I went ahead and put on the rubber anti-vibration grommets, I guess you would call it. And these here, these little eyelets, I'm gonna put them on my driver so that the shoulder is pointing down. Let's get all 4 of them out of the box here. And it's really important that the shoulder is on the bottom and not on the top, because when you install these, when you install the servo and you tighten down your servo screw, you don't want this to cut into your wood right here. You want it to rest on your shoulder here, because the flange keeps everything from working its way into the carbon, which is in your mount or the balsa or the light ply. Real simple little trick here. What I'll do is, I'm doing a bunch of them, I'll just stack these things right up. I'll go through, push it through the bottom, just like that. It's really easy to do. Saves time. My fingers, for some reason, I have a hard time pushing them in there like that, so I came up with this little trick. It seems to work really well. And what you can do is you can line them all up and just kind of go through. You can just about put a full airplane's worth of grommets on this, and it really speeds things up. Another thing with these servos, as you can see, we've got 4 screws here on the top of the case, 2 on the bottom. They do not go all the way through. What is really cool as well, you don't have to pull this servo out to change the gears. If you happen to wear some gears out or you know, break one, which I think we've broken 2 sets since we've been flying these things, you can actually, you don't have to remove the servo. You can leave it in the airframe, remove these 2 bolts, pull the cover off, replace the gear, put it back together, and you're good to go. Tucson one year, we had an issue. Jase was second up, and I was playing around with the aileron on his Tucson Shootout plane, and I noticed that we had a bad gear in one of his ailerons. So immediately, we had to flip the plane over, do a gear swap, and we did that in less than 5 minutes. And we're back to go. Got in line, and he didn't miss a round. So that's what I really like about these. They're really easily serviceable. When they come from the factory sometimes, just make sure, just like anything else. I mean, you're going to do this. I used to drag race, used to do, you know, all types of motorsports, and I never left it up to the factory, because it's my investment, and especially if you're drag racing, it's my life. So I always took it upon myself to go over things. I have not touched this one yet. This is from the factory, and it seems to be pretty tight so far. Every now and then, you'll find a loose one. Just snug down the case. And you can flip it over here as well. Snug it down. Just something I do. You can do that on every single servo. And then you should be good to go. Then you know everything's nice and tight. All right, here's a cool little trick. Just grab yourself a crescent wrench. Grip onto the square end there in the middle of your turnbuckle. Shove it into a drill. Get her back on here and run her in. Threads it in. I usually like to have about 3 threads showing, 2 or 3 threads showing. That gets you pretty close. Flip it around. Since it is a turnbuckle, you're going to want to reverse your drill for the opposite side and run it in. Just like that. And that should get you pretty close. All right, I'm test fitting here just to make sure the orientation of the servo is correct before I go ahead and screw it all in. I went ahead and ran in the ball links to about 2 or 3 threads showing. You want to get it equal. I'll go ahead and equal that out. As you can see, I ran this side in a little bit further than this side, but I'll go ahead and fix that. This is mostly just to get an estimate on the length that I need. So I'll go ahead and put it in the horn here, and I'll just place the servo here and make sure it lines up with the shaft, or is really close to it. You want a 90 degree off your servo just to get started. This way you know which is which. It does not go that way. As you can see, we're not a 90 degree to the eyelet here. So now we know the servo will be installed this direction here. Okay, now let's install the servo. We've got the orientation correct. I'm gonna go ahead and run the wire down before I even connect the extension. Run the wire down, grabbing a servo screw. Extreme Flake carries these. They're very nice, good quality. I love them. Get yourself a cheap drill. I use the heck out of this thing. I think it was $20 or something like that. But make sure it has variable speed, and it really speeds up the process of things. Now you don't want to tighten it up. All you're doing is running it into the first time. And basically what I'm doing is I'm threading the holes where the screws are going to be. You can kind of feel, just to make sure that the screw is actually guided in the existing hole. All right, hit every single one. Don't use the same screw, pull it out and go into there, because your servo might move a little bit. This way you know you're all aligned and you're ready to go. So then once you have each screw in, back them out. All right. Now we have threads in here. We actually threaded the holes where the servo screws are going to actually go into. I don't recommend going ahead and using the thin CA prior to doing that. You don't want to harden it just yet, because you won't make a nice uniform thread. Now that your threads are in, you can actually harden the threads just with some thin CA. I got a nice little tip on here to keep it nice and clean. And you don't need much. Just a little bit will do. It'll wick right in there. Something else I've learned, I don't want to kick this. I don't use kicker on it. Kicker will tend to let it set a little bit too fast, and it'll actually clog the hole that you formed. And when you get your servo in there, your screw will actually want to walk and make its own hole, and you're not using the hole that you actually threaded. So I'll just do this, and make sure you use thin CA. Medium CA will plug the hole as well. You don't want to do that. And you should be good to go. What I do is I'll do this and put it in this stage, and I'll move on to the next. I'll grab the other wing, I'll do the exact same thing, and I'll work in a big circle. So then I'll come back. By the time I finish everything else up, this will be ready to go. And then I'll go ahead and connect my extensions and put those in, and we'll do that in a little bit. Okay, something that we can do while we're CAing, adding CA to our threaded servo mount screws. Go ahead and feel free to get a little bit of CA in here. Get it all up on in here, in the side, around here, right in through here as well. The best way to do that is to actually pull the wing off the bench and tip it up on its side and let it work its way in all the way around. Obviously, if you're going to apply it here, put this down. If you're going to apply it here, put this end down. Just kind of let it wick in. Again, use thin CA for that. Yeah. As you can see, it really doesn't take a whole lot. Flip it upside down. Actually, you can put it around your foot, maybe. There you go. Turn the bottle up. Just kind of let it wick right in there. Just like that. Okay, let's install our servos. The first thing I'm going to do is actually connect the extension to the lead coming off the servo. Of course, you've got a ground, you've got the power, and then you've got your signal wire. On the MKS, the ground is the brown, the power is the red, and the signal is the orange. Now on the extreme flight leads here, the ground is the black, the red is the power, and the only difference is the white is your signal. So just remember white to orange, black to brown. That's all you have to remember. I like to heat shrink everything. That keeps everything nice and tight, and I know nothing's gonna come apart. So I'll go ahead and put my 3/8 heat shrink, and I'll slide it onto this bigger end first, just like so. And I'll reach down, and I'll grab some hemostats. All right, this will help me pull it through. Reach right in here, pull it all the way through. That way you can see everything. All right, again, remember, make sure you get this right, because once everything's heat shrunk together and you put it all together and you power it up and one servo's not working, chances are these are flipped backwards. So you want to make sure this is right, because that can be a lot more extra work pulling the servo out, cutting heat shrink, and reading just to flip it over. So this is a part that you really need to pay attention to. So black to brown is what I'm going to do here. Clips in nice and tight, just like that. Slide your heat shrink over. All right, you can kind of feel if it's centered in there. You can see it right there. Just like so. And then what I use is a Wagner paint stripper. Works really well. It's a digital, has different settings. I crank it all the way up, let it get warm. You want it as hot as possible, because you want the outside to get warm. You don't want the wire to get warm. Because if you have to hold it on there for a while, then your connector will actually start to melt, and you don't want that. So you want instant heat to where it'll just shrink the heat shrink. Just like that. See how fast that is? Just like that. And then you're done. All right, after that's done, just give it a once over, make sure it's good and tight, and that's not gonna come apart. Make sure your lead is nice and straight. And if you look in here, there's gonna be a tube. It should fish right in there pretty easily. And Jase will keep an eye right down there until he sees it. He'll let me know. Once he does, he'll grab a hold of it with the hemostats. If you have some piano wire, that works good too. You can fish it through. All right, I got it. But as you can see, that works pretty fast. And as he pulls, where the connection comes through and where it starts to guide into the tube, you're gonna wanna kind of guide it in as he pulls it through. Otherwise it's gonna catch. Just to make the bend there. Pull it right through, Jase. There you go, keep pulling. Perfect. Just like that. And then we will go ahead and put our servo screws in. It's up to you. Again, I like to use this, but I don't like to go all the way into where it's tight. The last little bit, I'll screw on by hand. That way I can feel the snugness of the screw, and I'm not stripping anything. So I'll get it all the way into where the shoulder or the screw actually starts to hit the grommet. And again, you don't want to make a new hole when you're doing this, because that just defeated the purpose of actually using CA in our prior step. There we go. Now tighten the rest up by hand. That's pretty snug. Doing this this method with the CA, it makes for a nice tight mount. I mean, it's surprising. It's almost like you're threading it into a blind nut. Surprising how tight you can get it, but you can strip it out, so just be careful. There, this is set and ready to go. And then now that Jase has pulled this lead through, we'll grab another servo. And we will run this through here. Actually, yeah, Jase, let's just run this through and run it all the way out. No need to go through that tube right there. Just go ahead and run out to where you see it. Here's your hemostat. You can grab a hold of it. Nice job. All right. We have this lead all the way out. This is our end servo. I prefer to call that as our number 2 servo on our, will this be our left wing? And now I'm going to do the same thing. Jase, let's run this one all the way through. Let me know if you can grab a hold of it. All right. Just like that. Grab a couple of our Extreme Flight servo screws. All right, let's go ahead and install our multiplex Extreme Flight servo lead connector for our wing. These are really awesome little deal here. As you can see, there's 2 leads here for 2 servos, and they have a really nice connector here. It really takes the question out of, like, when you're at the field. Okay, you've got 2 leads coming off your receiver, 2 leads coming off your wing, which one goes where? I used to have a colored zip tie on them, and that's the only way I could remember. But these actually go in one way. As you can see, there's a little notch here, or a little, looks like a little square piece sticking out, and then you've got the notch here on this side. They'll only go in one way, just like that. If you try to plug it in this way, it's not gonna go. So it's pretty much foolproof. They're really, really handy little deal. As far as which end goes where, it doesn't matter at this point. We decide that once this end goes into the receiver. That's when we determine which servo we want to which channel. At this point, we just connect them. And it's a really nice, clean setup. So let's go ahead and heat shrink this. Again, remember this one here, the blue is your ground, the red, of course, is your power, and the white, I'm sorry, the white is your signal. Am I right? Yep, blue is your ground, red is your power, white is your signal. And then, of course, on the extension lead, we covered that earlier. White is your signal, red is your power, and black is your ground. Again, I like to use heat shrink on everything. The clips are really nice as well, but I never had a need to remove these at the field unless there's an issue that we've had, or unless we need to get at the servo or do something serious, then I'll need to do that. But once they're on, they're on. There you go, Jase. Using the old Wagner power stripper. Hit high there. Let it get hot. You get it too close to your hand, that thing will melt your skin. Hold it nice and close because you want to heat it up quick. There you go, and hit the other one. Very good. And turn it over. You do the same thing real fast. Yep. Same thing here. Perfect. Just like that, then we're all set. All right, let's go ahead and install the elevator servo. We use the MKS 3850 for 120cc airplanes. Now, yours may vary, your brand may vary. I would highly suggest test fitting everything prior throughout your whole build. And if you're using the MKS, you're gonna notice that once the servo is seated into the servo mount, it's gonna be inset a little ways. Therefore, if you go ahead and mount it in, screw it all in, and attach your servo arm, you're gonna notice that it's not gonna be seated. Your servo arm will not seat all the way into the spline because it'll rub right here. What we used to do is take our knife and clearance this right here. That way everything is all good to go. Now, with the kits, you will find these 4 pieces of wood right here. They're carbon fiber laminate. On one side, you can see the plywood on the other. These are actually spacers so that you don't have to trim this anymore. Now with the MKS, which we use, I have found that we have used all 4. What I'll do is I'll go face to face this way, wood to wood, and I will take some thin CA, wick it all in, make sure everything's nice and square, wick it in, and then I will go ahead and mount this right inside. I'll drip a little bit of CA in, get that secure. This is the exact thickness that you need with the MKS servo to get the spline out into the slot right where you need it. Therefore, you don't have to do any trimming whatsoever. It makes for a super nice, clean build. As far as orientation goes, make sure your servo is placed to where the output shaft is in the center of your slot here, and you should be all set to go. So, with that in mind, let's just go ahead and install our servo. This might take a little bit of work. You know, it's down in there. You know, the clearances are nice and tight, which is exactly what you want. So just be patient and it will fit in there. And once I get this in here, I'll show you exactly what it looks like. Okay, that wasn't so bad. As you can see here, Extreme Flight is kind enough to allow us to put, and they go ahead and they put a slot here for your lead to come out of, which comes out of your servo. There's a slot there. Go ahead and route that through that slot, and everything will fit nice and tight. It really deletes having to have an oversized servo opening just by using that slot, where everything stays nice and tight, which is exactly what you want. You need to hold that servo nice and tight without moving around. So we're all set to go ahead and start screwing things in. Go ahead and mount this in there. We've already got our CA, and we CA'd the thin CA'd our holes. So everything should be good to go. Our threads are nice and tight, or they're nice and hard. So. I love my cheap little cordless. Saves a lot of work, a lot of time. Again, using my Extreme Flight servo screws. While using the cordless drill here, You don't want to run it all the way in because it will strip if you do that. There you go. So I run it up to where the shoulder here of the screw just touches the grommet, and then you can run the rest in by hand. That way you get a good feel, and you know that you're not going to be stripping it out. It's actually pretty amazing. You run these screws in and back them out, and you make these little threads in the wood, and you wick in that CA. It's amazing how tough these little threads are and how strong of a hold it actually is. Like I said before, it's almost like you have a blind nut in there. But again, be careful, you can strip them out. So just be aware of that. Okay, all right, one servo installed, just that easy. All right, let's install the landing gear. So first thing you're gonna wanna do is make sure that you have the correct cuff where it needs to go. And so this would be the left side. Goes on just like so. Obviously, you want to remember to do this first, because once your gear and your wheel pants are on, once your wheels and wheel pants are on, it's not going to be very easy to put those on. So, all right, next you're going to take your axle.
Are we correct with saying that the larger surface area will go towards the fuselage?
Yes, the largest will go underneath to the belly. What you have is you have a flange here. If you take a look, you can see where the exit is for the landing gear. You have more of a flange here, longer flange, shorter flange. This here will be underneath. It's rain true for pretty much all the 120cc airplanes. So this will be on the belly, and this will be up above toward the canopy. All right. So put a little bit of red Loctite on here, right on the threads. Some will say you don't need to use Loctite because it's a nylon nut, but again, it's just something I like to do. There you go, Jase. You can do the same right over there. And then install your washer, and then your nut. You just want to snug this up very well. You don't want to really reef down on it because you can snap the axle. That feels pretty good. There you go, Jase. You can do the same. And at this point, go ahead and put one of your collars here. Go ahead and slide that on. I personally like to use the, you can see a little shoulder here. I like it pointed toward the wheel. Slide it on like so. Slide the wheel on. Grab the other one, same thing. Flip it around so that the shoulder here is pointed toward your wheel.
We'll jump in here and make a note about a small change to the kits. Since this build sequence was filmed, Extreme Flight is always changing, improving its kits in large and small ways. And as this change is propagated across the entire line, you may have in your particular kit this piece, which replaces the outer wheel collar. The reason for replacing the outer wheel collar with this piece, which is aluminum and it screws into a piece of plywood, is so that after the assembly is complete and this is on the axle, later when you install the wheel pant, you can epoxy glue the wheel pant to the plywood pad on the outer collar piece. This drastically strengthens the wheel pant assembly, and the wheel pant will last much longer this way. All right, back to the program.
And slide it out on your axle a little bit. Slide the whole assembly out. So maybe you have about maybe a 1/4 inch standing out. That seems to work pretty well. A little bit of a 1/4 inch reveal here. And tighten up your set screw. Again, don't over tighten. Do the same thing here. Again, don't over tighten. What I'm doing is I'm making an impression on the axle. And once I have that set, I'm actually gonna pull them off. I'm gonna grind a little flat spot on here. I'm gonna show you exactly what I mean by that. So Jase has the axle on over here. Slide the collar on again, shoulder toward the wheel. Slide the wheel on. And again, the other one toward the wheel, which goes in toward the landing gear on the outside. About a 1/4 inch reveal. Again, tighten it up just enough to leave an impression on the axle. Slide your wheel out and slide the other collar up to it on the inside. Do the same, just enough to leave an impression on the axle. Make sure they spin fairly easy. They'll loosen up, but I like them about, fairly snug, so there's some friction. But then, as I said, they'll loosen up. I'm gonna go ahead and disassemble once again. Slide your wheel off. I don't know if you can see it, but actually the set screw did leave a little impression here, and we're gonna use that to grind a flat spot. All right, now we got the camera brought in, we'll take a look here. We see an impression here, an impression here. Those are from the set screw, so we know exactly where to grind. All right, I like to use my side grinder. You can use a Dremel, but I've always preferred this. It lasts forever. It'll last me forever doing this, so that's what I prefer. And you don't want to go real deep. All you're doing is making a little flat spot. That's all you're doing. And that's it. That's all you need. All right, now that we have our groove cut into the axle, take your collar with the shoulder facing outward, because this is the inside collar, goes on first, and go ahead and slide that over your axle. What I like to do is back this set screw all the way out. Take my red Loctite, put a little bit on that screw, just very little, it's all you need. So the whole theory behind this is what you're doing is you're actually making a recessed groove so that this set screw will go inside of that groove and it will not back out because of the Loctite. So with that theory of this set screw not backing out and with it in the groove, there's absolutely zero way this can come off. The red Loctite pretty much ensures that, and to this day I don't think we've lost a wheel, have we?
Fortunately.
Yeah, fortunately. So it seems to work for us. So then slide your wheel over. Same thing, grab your collar. Have it all laying over here.
Probably get backed out a little bit.
Okay.
Slide it on.
All right. Yeah, you want to back this all the way out. Take it right off. Put your collar or your shoulder in toward the wheel. Right, toward the rim, I guess you'd call it, or wheel. Grab your red Loctite, apply some of that right to the thread. Like I said, it doesn't need much. Thread it in. You can actually feel it go right into that groove that you already ground. Again, you don't need to really crank it down. The Loctite's going to do its job. Go ahead and snug it up a little bit, both of them. You should be good to go. Once that Loctite is set, you're not going to get that off, and it's not going to fall off. You could probably get it off with a little bit of heat, but other than that, you're good to go. You're going to be set. All right, let's move on to the wheel pant. Go ahead and hang on to that, Jase. Go ahead and put that in place. And I like to use a little bit of blue Loctite, just in case we need to remove the wheel pant later on down the road. Again, you don't need much. Take your 3mm bolt with a washer, just a regular flat washer. Let's see here. Line up the hole. Just kind of snug the first one up a little bit just to hold it. Go ahead, there you go. Same thing, a little bit of blue Loctite. Everything lines up really nice. And again, since we have Loctite on here, you don't have to go real tight. Just kind of snug everything up. You don't want to strip the blind nut. There we go. Just like that. And one is all set. One side's done. Rolls nice and free. The wheel is centered nice in your wheel pant, and looks like a nice assembly.
All right, we have the fuselage here on the stand. We got the landing gear. We're gonna make the install.
Okay. I'm gonna put a little bit of red Loctite on these bolts. I'm gonna go up through the bottom. Just like that. There. All right, Jason's using a 1/4" drive. I'm using a 3/8 drive, but I'm hanging on to it right here. I'm not way out here where you can get a bunch of leverage. I'm just tightening it up right here because you do not want to over tighten these. Loctite, snug it up nice and tight, hanging on to it right here. You should be good to go.
All right, next we're gonna assemble the tail wheel. On this extra NG, the tail wheel will slide through this hole here underneath the fairing. This is to emulate the full scale look. You'll see other extreme flight aerobatic aircraft, the tail wheel mounts on the top, directly in. And this is just the way how this one is. So we'll go ahead and do that.
All right, there's a nice little opening here. You can slide the tail wheel right in there. We got 3 openings here. Go ahead and slide it Put one bolt in. There you go, Jase. Go ahead and put some Loctite on those other two bolts that you have. This can be a little bit of a tight spot putting in your screws. So what I did is I just put a little dab of thin CA right at the tip of my tool here, and it seems to work really well. It holds just enough to where you can flip it upside down and guide your screw right into the hole there and thread it right in. Just like so. Okay, next let's go ahead and install our gear cuffs. What I like to use for that is goop. There's a couple different types. There's a plumber's, there's a marine, and there's a household goop. I've tried the household goop before, and it what happens is the exhaust or smoke oil or whatever you use will actually eat the household formula that they have. The best I found was the marine. Like I said, the plumber's version works well too, but I found that the marine is actually works the best. Okay, let's go ahead and slide that over so I have a little more room. Again, you want to check the fit. Slide your cuff up. Make sure it fits nice and secure and nice and tight along the fuselage. Take a look all the way around that the contour is the same. And get yourself some painter's tape. Slide your cuff up and just kind of mark where the end comes. Just like this. Make a little mark here with your tape. And then you can slide your cuff down. Be real liberal with this. What it actually does is you put a nice thick heavy bead and you leave your airframe upright while you do this, because what's going to happen is it's actually going to ooze down in through and form a seal all the way around, and that's what will adhere your cuff to the landing gear. You're not actually attaching it to the fuselage. What you're doing is you're attaching it to the landing gear. You have to poke a little hole here. It's a clear adhesive. It doesn't change color. It always stays clear. So if you do happen to get a little bit on your landing gear or whatever, don't worry about it. You won't see it. You just have a little bit of gloss, or later on, once it dries, you can take it and rub your finger on it and it'll ball up and you can just peel it right off. It's almost like rubber. So what I'll do first is I'll come along the bottom, do a nice heavy bead right along top. As you can see, I'm really making a good bead here. What will happen, gravity will now do its thing and it'll kind of ooze down. As you can see right here, it's oozing down and filling the gaps. It's going to give you a nice seal, and it will hold, trust me. Go ahead and hold that, Jase. Normally when I'm out here in the shop working alone, I'll have a piece of tape about this long. I'll have it stuck right here. I can push it up, come along through here on the bottom, just like that. It doesn't have to be fancy, just enough to hold it up in place. That's all you need. And that's it. If you get a little bit on here or on your fuse or whatever, like I say, it'll just ball right up and come right off. Make sure it's nice and tight, which it is. Just like so. You can see a nice little bead here. Like I say, leave it until it dries. You can take your X-Acto knife or whatever and clean that right up. Just like that. And then just let her set. It'll dry and it'll stay put. And what's nice also, because it's not connected to fuselage, you can remove the gear just fine, and you won't have any problems like that if you need to. All right, now that this is set overnight, we'll go ahead and peel the tape off and see how it turned out. Okay, one of the things I also do here is I'll put a little bit of tape here just to act as a dam, because once the goop starts flowing, it can work out underneath this gap here and start running down. So I just put a little bit of tape here just to stop that. All right, as I said, it sat overnight. Sometimes this will not harden because of the tape, but it looks like our job did pretty good so far. I'll just take a nice sharp razor, take a cut here, clean that up. Just like that. Sometimes it takes a little bit of work. There we go. Looks pretty good. If a little bit sticks out, that's okay. There we go.
This is the end of part 1 of the presentation. Part 2 begins with engine preparation.